We suffer many losses throughout our life. Death brings the deepest sorrow, but deteriorating health, the breakup of a relationship, unfulfilled career plans, all of these cause us grief and suffering. Grief is as unique as each person. Whatever your feeling is, you're normal as long as it's not extreme depression. Grief and suffering are universal. Death, loss, and bereavement bring us together as humans. Sharing our grief and loss brings us comfort. Sharing our stories assures us we are not alone with our sorrow.
So this book was written after my mother's death. My mother died in 2009, and about a year after that I started a blog called Grief Shared, and that was my first opportunity to understand how people don't have a place to talk about their grieving. People would write and say, "Thank you for telling me how you were feeling, how you were reacting. I thought I was the only one who felt that way." So it is very helpful for me to share my story. So it's my story of going through the dying and death of my mother, through a long period of deep grief and mourning, and then coming to a new place in my life. So I'd like to take a little time to read you some of the stories in my book that are experiences you may well have already shared or may come to experience in your professional lives, working with people who are dying and their loved ones. So my mother was taken to the hospital one Sunday evening. She was choking and gasping and could barely breathe. She was put on antibiotics for pneumonia. I spent every day at her bedside trying to find out what was going on, asking the doctors, is Mom dying? Is the antibiotic working? Is she going to survive? And often not getting very substantive answers. Day 10 came along, and the young doctor who'd been mainly with Mom came striding into the room and said, "It's day 10, the antibiotic cycle is over, we're discharging your mom today at noon." And I was completely overwhelmed and shocked. No one had mentioned that this was going to happen, and I really didn't know what to do. I recalled that 9 years previously, when Mom had been in the hospital, there was a resident doctor, an older man who we had been with, and I thought perhaps he might be able to help me understand. So I went out looking for him. I rushed down the long gray-green hallway, looking into every room, frantically trying to find him. There he is. I'll hang around outside the door and wait. Oh no, I've just missed him. He came out and headed in the opposite direction. I walked quickly to catch up. I wanted to run after him. I wanted to call out his name. Another doctor came out of a room adjacent, and they continued down the corridor, walking and talking animatedly. I thought to myself, this is very embarrassing. Here I am, practically stalking this man as if I were a teenager, chasing a rock star for his autograph. I was screaming inside. I walked even faster. Breathless, I caught up and reached out for his arm. "Doctor, I have to talk to you. This is a matter of life and death. It's my mother. They want to discharge her at noon today. She's on an IV. She's barely alive. How can I take her away? How can I look after her? She's safe here." Someone along the way had handed me a pamphlet describing palliative care and hospice services. And I remember going out into the parking lot and calling on my cell phone, trying to reach the palliative care office, and their line was always busy. was a cold November day, and I felt terribly alone, terribly helpless. Looking back, I realize now how really absurd it was that I wasn't prepared for my mother's dying. She had been, she called me her mom, so I had been my mom's mom for most of my growing up life. She was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 11 and bipolar disease when I was a young teenager, and she later had bladder cancer. So I was always there with her and for her, and very much aware of her needs and the treatment options that we needed to consider. So why wasn't I better prepared? Why hadn't I figured out everything that I needed to know about palliative care? And the only answer I can give myself is that I just didn't expect her to die. She had been so interwoven in my life. I was always visiting her, taking her to doctor's appointments, looking after her every need. The idea that she could die, not be in my life anymore, was really impossible for me to comprehend. And yes, she was old and frail. She was in a wheelchair. She had mild dementia, but I did not expect her to die. It was outside of the realm of what my heart, I guess, my emotions could comprehend.